Okay, I think it has started. Okay. So first of all, thanks to many of you. I saw that many of you submitted your responses to the RC passage. I could seriously look at only the first two that were submitted yesterday, but I sort of uh, browsed through some of the responses that were submitted today. Um, Against my expectation, most of the understanding of the passage was correct. Okay, I was thinking that the passage was going to be at least the people who submitted. It could be a biased set, people who are clear or sure about their understanding the passage might have submitted their responses. So that the bias could still be there. But I could sense that by reading the your explanations, that yeah, many of you have more or less correctly understood the passage. Interestingly, still many of you ended up faltering on the questions. So that was interesting for me, and most of you faltered around sort of one or two areas which we would discover or which we would talk about. But yeah, first of all, thank you so much. It was great to see many of you submitting your responses, and I would also like to share the pattern which was very helpful for me to really go through. So this is, I think this is Tushar's submission, and I'm not saying this is the only submission in this format, but I'm just highlighting it that this is a very helpful way to write. So basically, the way is there is a statement. So he has pasted again. I'm getting it if I'm getting it right. This is Tushar's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
Fine.
So he has pasted this original statement of the passage here. So I don't need to go back to the passage to see which statement he is talking about. Then right after that, there is a explanation of that statement. Uh, so this is very helpful. Another helpful thing is that the color is different. So it's very easy to distinguish, okay, this is the passage and this is his explanation. So that is very helpful for me to read. Customer friendly um, response. Okay. And then for each of the options, questions also, again, similar format. So very, very easy to read, very easy to understand. Sort of this is the passage and this is the response. So yeah, this was very helpful. And again, many of you have actually submitted in this way. So that was very helpful. So the format is going to be, I'll start with the passage. I'll go line by line. Many of you have again done that, and one of you mostly understand it correctly, but I'll still go through that passage on my own. And this is the first two students who submitted the responses. So I've captured them here. And once we have discussed the passage, then we'll go to the question. I think where the real fun will be, because that's where many of you have made mistakes. Okay. So the process of reading a passage is pretty simple, nothing technical about it. And this is not specific to reading the passage. This is the way I read anything, or I think anybody should read anything in this way if you're trying to understand it. We read a statement, we try to understand it. Then we read the second statement, again, we understand it, and then we connect it back. Okay, so every statement we understand and then connect to the context. Understand, connect to the context. Okay, that's all. After you have read a few statements, 3, 4, 5 statements, you can just take up another pause to really see the overall how the story is evolving. That's the only additional step that you may take, because even if you are making connections at every statement, you may sort of after 3, 4, 5 statement, you may not have a hold on the how the whole story is evolving. Right? So that's an additional step. After 3, 4, 5 statement, it could be after a paragraph. If the paragraph is long, you can take a pause even in the middle of a paragraph. That's fine. Essentially, the idea is to also have a hold on the story. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So this is how I read, whether it's CR, RC, or even quant questions also. When I read, sort of I understand, and then I see, okay, how it connects back. Okay. So let's start with the first statement. this may keep coming. So it says microwear patterns found on the teeth of long extant specimens. Okay, so we are talking about some microwear patterns found on the teeth. So, right, so when we read this, so as the student one is saying it, I start thinking about wear and tear patterns, some kind of sort of patterns on the teeth, some wear and tear. Okay, so microwear patterns found on the teeth of long extant specimens. So long extend for a long time. Specimens of the primate species. So we are talking about specific primate species, which this, I don't know the pronunciation, so I'll say, let's say Austra, may provide evidence about their diets. Okay, so we are saying these micro wear and tear patterns on the teeth of these specimens may tell us about what their diets were. So what they used to eat, we can figure out by looking at the wear and tear patterns of their teeth. Okay, and this is almost what these two students are saying. Okay. For example, on the basis of tooth microwear patterns, Walker dismisses Jolly's hypothesis. So these are two new names that we have not talked about. So Walker, and we have a Jolly's hypothesis. Jolly's hypothesis is this Ostra ate hard seeds. This is new information for me that Jolly had a hypothesis that these species ate hard seeds. And Walker is dismissing that hypothesis. So according to Walker, Ostra didn't eat hard seeds. And Walker is saying this on the basis of tooth microwear patterns. Essentially, it's an example of the previous statement because the previous statement was saying that microwear patterns may tell us about the diets, right? And the Walker is using the microwear pattern to make a statement about the diet that no, Ostra didn't eat hard seeds, whereas Jolly was hypothesizing that this species ate hard seeds. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he also disputes, which is he's referring to Walker. Walker also disputes, again, I don't know the pronunciation, this person's suggestion. So the Walker also dispute this person's suggestion that the heavy enamel, what is the pronunciation? Enamel?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
enamel.
Yeah.
Enamel. Yeah, my pronunciation is not great. So heavy enamel of Ostra species. So this teeth, heavy enamel on the teeth of this species is an adaptation to bone crunching. Okay, so again, so these statements are very compound statements because we didn't even know what this person's suggestion was, and suddenly we are talking about somebody disputing the suggestion. Right? So first we need to understand the suggestion, then we need to understand, okay, this suggestion has been disputed. Right? The normal simple flow would be this is the suggestion and this person disputes it. Right? But within the same statement, here we are given the suggestion and that it is being disputed. So the suggestion is the enamel of teeth of this same species we are talking about is an adaptation to bone crunching. So it has come about because of bone crunching, right? Is an adaptation to bone crunching means because this species crunches bones, that's why there is heavy enamel on the teeth of this species. This is the SS suggestion. I don't know. How do you pronounce this? Zales. Or what is the pronunciation?
Zales.
Sorry?
Zales.
Zales.
So, yeah.
Yes. I hope. Sorry. So Zales suggestion. So he disputes Zales suggestion. So Zales suggestion is the heavy enamel, which is on the teeth of this species, is because of bone crunching. And Walker is disputing that. So according to Walker, it's not an adaptation to bone crunching. Since both seed cracking and bone crunching produce distinctive microwear characteristics on teeth. So again, Walker is using microwear patterns to say that this heavy enamel is not an adaptation to bone crunching. Why? Because bone crunching produces distinctive microwear characteristics on teeth. So, but that's fine. So, bone crunching produces distinctive microwear characteristics on teeth. But how does that lead to that heavy enamel is not an adaptation to bone crunching?
Sir, I have a question here.
Hmm.
So the part after comma, since both seed cracking and bone crunching. So is it the continuation of the clause starting after that, or is it the miscontinuation of the clause, the main clause? He also disputes suggestion.
Okay.
So I got little confused here.
Okay. So, what your question is whether this is how it should be read? Or this is how it should be read? Right?
Correct. Yeah.
So, any take on this?
What is the question, sir? Sorry, I didn't understand what Rochak said.
So the question is, this sense part, does that go with this? The heavy adaptation is sort of the heavy enamel of this teeth is an adaptation to bone crunching sense. So sense part goes with this, or sense part goes with the dispute that he also disputes Zale's suggestion since this. That is the question.
I
And
think
in general, anybody who wants to speak, please raise your hand first. That would be helpful. Before
Sorry, sorry, sir, I forgot.
now you can go ahead, but yeah, in general. Yeah, Ria, you were saying something?
Yeah, sir. I think it goes with the heavy enamel.
This one.
The
Right?
suggestion, yes.
So it
Yeah,
goes with
yes, since both goes with the heavy enamel, yes.
okay. ठीक है. Any other? So why? Any reason why it doesn't go with the second? It goes with first.
Because Walker is disputing the suggestion, and then comes the suggestion, and then is explaining that the heavy enamel, which is an adaptation to bone crunching, like the heavy enamel is probably after the bone crunching, and that heavy enamel characteristic of the teeth is different from the characteristic of seed cracking. They produce different microwave characteristics on teeth. So before that, it's explaining that the suggestion. Yeah.
Okay. ठीक है, शिवांगी.
So for me, the second one works because I think that he is talking that he disputes Sally's suggestion and what suggestion. Then the suggestion has been explained. And the suggestion is the heavy enamel of the ostra teeth is an adaptation of bone crunching. And then there's a reason for disputing that. And the reason is since both the seed cracking and bone crunching produce distinctive microwear characteristics on the teeth. So the other is the suggestion and why reason for the suggestion and the reason for suggestion.
Okay. But how do you sort of, that's fine. So you have a reason that to say that, okay, the first he disputes this suggestion, and then there is a reason why he disputes. But how do you respond to Ria, who is saying that, no, this is a reason for the suggestion itself?
is a suggestion for the reason.
Yeah, this is what
I
Ria is saying, that this is a reason for the suggestion that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching since this.
But that does not, for me, that is not following because Zale's suggestion is heavy enamel of ostra teeth is an adaptation to bone crunching. And then the other thing after since is going in the opposite direction for me. Teeth cracking and bone crunching produce distinctive microwear characteristics on the teeth. So how can that be followed by the suggestion? I think this is going in the opposite direction, and that's why it's the reason why he's disputing the suggestion. So it's actually the reason for disputing.
Why is it going in the opposite direction? So bone crunching produces distinctive microwear characteristics. And that's why, so by looking at that microwear characteristics, that this Zale could be making this suggestion that, yeah, given this microwear pattern, it seems that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching.
Uh, I think uh, I think my reasoning was that uh, Sally's suggestion is that heavy enamel of ostrich teeth is an adaptation for bone crunching, but he's disputing is because something else is also doing the same microwear patterns, which is seed cracking as well. I think this, or I think this was my reason.
Okay, so you are thinking that seed cracking and bone crunching, they produce similar microwear patterns. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess yes.
So you are thinking that by looking at microwear patterns, we cannot say whether they were bone crunching or they were seed cracking seeds.
Yes.
Okay. So if two things produce distinctive characteristics, okay. So you're thinking that they're producing a specific kind of microwear characteristics. So then now we cannot figure out whether it was because of bone crunching or seed cracking.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is what I thought.
Hmm. Yeah, I see a lot of raised hand, but I'll ask you. But let me first ask Ria. So how do you respond to what Shivangi said?
So, first of all, since is explaining the reasoning. Since means, since
Correct.
meaning implies it's a reasoning. Okay,
Correct.
so Walker disputes Zale's suggestion. Suggestion of Zale's is that the heavy enamel of AUS teeth is an adaptation to bone crunching, as both of them produce different microwave characteristics. They produce different. They're not same. Distinctive means different. So
It means different.
yeah,
Okay. So you're saying they produce different
they
microwear.
produce different. Exactly. That's why they're saying no, that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching. As both seed cracking and crunching, they produce different microwave characteristics on teeth. That's the explanation. Seed cracking का अलग है characteristic on teeth, bone crunching का अलग है. तो जो वो बता रहे heavy enamel of US teeth, वो adaptation to bone crunching है. वो suggestion है वो, जो Walker dispute कर रहा है.
Okay. So Shivangi was saying that they produce similar microwear characteristics. You are saying distinctive means different. So they are producing different.
Yeah,
mic-
similar nowhere it's written. Similar nowhere it's written. We are assuming, is my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah. Distinctive is mentioned. They produce different microwear characteristics on teeth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Shivangi, you want to say something?
So yeah, I think what I was saying was seed cracking and bone crunching, they produce different microwear patterns only, not similar. What I meant was we were following on the paragraph that, through their diet, they might be, we can figure out about their diet. And then we were talking about the seed crunching. And then I think this is where it's explained that this is why their heavy enamel is not an adaptation of bone crunching because a seed cracking a species and a bone crunching species would produce distinctive microwear characteristics of the teeth.
So if they produce distinctive or different microwear patterns, so how does that dispute Zale's suggestion? So if they produce different microwear patterns, uh, so how does that call into question that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching?
I'm not sure. I got confused.
Okay. Okay. So Tanisha has written in the chat that distinctive means unique. So they produce unique microwear characteristics, which allows the possibility that it could be the same also. Okay. Yeah, Karthikeya, you want to add something to what has already been said? Something new to add?
No, so my point was that only like when we start uh, this line, he also disputes the suggestion. So I thought that the heavy part, this is the suggestion which he disputes, and then since is the reasoning for why he disputes that suggestion.
Okay, so you are saying this one.
Second one.
Okay. Shreya, you have anything to add? Anything new to add?
Hello. Is my voice audible? Actually, there's a lot of background noise.
It's hardly audible.
Yeah. So I
It's
think
very
that,
low. It's very low.
hello. Now is it better?
It's quite low.
Actually, I've written in the chat box if you can see.
Okay. Okay. Since belongs to 2. Okay, so you're going with 2. Hard seed cracking and bone crunching should yield same microwear patterns on teeth, logically thinking. Okay. So you're saying logically thinking, seed cracking, bone crunching, both are hard jobs for the teeth. So it makes sense to, and as Tanisha was saying, distinctive means unique, so they could mean the same also. So they produce a unique microwear characteristics. So they could be producing the same microwear characteristics on teeth. Okay. But because distinctive patterns are created on teeth by seed cracking, therefore Walker dismiss Zale's distinctive means different. Okay. So you don't agree with what Tanisha said. Okay. So you're saying they should yield same. Okay, then I'm not able to relate because it's saying they produce. So you're saying it since they produce, then why are you saying? Okay, I'm not able to understand then your reasoning. Shreya, you'll need to explain it. If you think it's different, then I'm not able to follow your reasoning, what you have written here. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my thought process, and I'm also searching the exact meaning of. Yeah, so distinctive means unique, as Tanisha was saying, but unique by definition would mean unique. It's different for everybody, right? Uh, that's also seems to the meaning here that it's characteristic of one person or thing, so serving to distinguish from others. Okay. So they produce distinctive microwear patterns. I would think it's unique, but I would also think that they are different from each other because they are unique. Okay. So they are producing unique and patterns on teeth. Okay. So this is what the meaning of sense part is. So seed cracking is not relevant then for this discussion, right? What is relevant is bone crunching is producing distinctive or unique microwave characteristics on teeth. Okay. And who was using microwave characteristics so far? Walker. Right? In the previous sentence, Walker was using microwave patterns to dismiss somebody's hypothesis, Jolly's hypothesis that these A species ate hard seeds. Right? Right? So now we are saying that he is also challenging somebody else using, and now in the same sentence we are saying using again microwave patterns. Right? So given an option to think both ways, I'll have a very clear bias towards thinking that it's disputing because of microwave patterns. Okay. And does it make sense to think that way? So that was the question I asked, and essentially that led to this discussion, that how would looking at microwave patterns, we get to know that bone crunching has a unique microwave pattern. This is a sense part. And on that basis, Walker is disputing Zale's suggestion that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching. And why he could dispute, because bone crunching has a unique microwave pattern. How do these things fit in? Again, the answer may be very obvious to you, but I'll make it explicitly out there. What my thought will be, okay, so basically this Walker might not have found that microwave pattern on this species teeth. This is the connection, which again may be obvious for some of you, but that is the implicit connection. Since bone crunching produces a unique pattern, that's why he could dispute Zale's suggestion that it's an adaptation to bone crunching. Okay, how? Because he might not have found that pattern on that species teeth. So according to Walker, that species didn't used to crunch bones, right? So naturally, if species didn't crunch bones, the enamel cannot be an adaptation to bone crunching in that case. Okay. This is how I'll understand it. So regarding this Ronix question, so my bias will be to think in terms of Walker disputing suggestion, because that's how the previous sentence was also in that direction, that using microwave patterns, he was challenging somebody. Another mild, very small indicator is this presence of comma. So this puts an additional pause there. Okay, this is a suggestion. Now let's take a pause. If this is also part of that, I would expect there would not be any comma there. But this is, for me, a milder suggestion. The major suggestion is the previous sentence, the pattern followed in the previous sentence. Yeah, Krishna.
CJ, just a question. So if comma would not be there, we can remove that part, relative clause.
Hmm?
I mean, if comma would not be there before since, then suggestion that, I mean, this could be removable, right? I mean, like as a relative clause.
वो तो अभी भी removable ही है. मतलब I'm not sure in what context you are saying removable.
Removable meaning this since goes to dispute part.
Yeah.
Or okay. So I mean, then why you said that comma, since if comma would not be there, I'm actually confused now.
हाँ नहीं मैं कह रहा था comma से additional मुझे पता लगता है कि suggestion part is over, now it's back to the main sentence.
Okay. That was my understanding as well. Got it. Thank you.
No, Shreya, this is not what I'm saying. So Shreya is asking a question. So Shreya, can you try to speak? Okay, I'm not sure whether your mic is fine. But this is not what I'm saying. Yeah. Yukush, do you have anything else to add? Go ahead.
I I agree with what you said. I mean, like Walker has disputed Zale's suggestion.
Okay.
So I mean that is understood. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Rajak, you have anything to add?
सर ये comma के बाद since तो it can be a continuation to the dependent clause starting after that also, right?
It can be, but that's what I'm saying. This is a milder suggestion. But normally, अगर नहीं comma अगर वैसे तो क्यों लगाओगे? That के बाद अगर
नहीं
since
नहीं,
आ
जो
रहा है,
that के बाद में जो हमारा जो ये dependent the heavy NML ये स्टार्ट हो रहा है, तो ये इसका भी तो रीजन हो सकता है, मतलब जो आप पहले कह रहे थे कि
वही मैं कह रहा हूँ पोटेंशियल है, बट नॉर्मली इफ आई हैव अ प्रेफरेंस, इसमें मैं अदर सिंस नहीं लगाऊंगा अगर मुझे दैट की क्लॉज के कंटिन्यूएशन करना है।
हम्म
अगर मुझे वापस मेन क्लॉज पे जाना है, देन आई विल पुट एन एडिशनल पॉज, बट अगेन दिस इज अ माइल्डर रीजन। ठीक है, डोंट गेट इनटू दिस नुआंसेस। एक सेकंड, गिव मी अ मिनट।
sure.
या सॉरी, या रोचक क्या कह रहे?
नहीं बस सर समझ गया था सर, ये चीज एक्चुअली में बाद में भी समझ में आती है जब हम पैराग्राफ में आगे जाते हैं कि मतलब जो मिस्टर डब्ल्यू है वो वाज proposing more on this species to be frugivorous, right? बट हम जब शुरू से पढ़ते आ रहे हैं तो उस केस में ये कंफ्यूजन आ जाता है कि इसको हमें कैसे वो करना है, तो दैट वाज द होल चैलेंज हियर। थैंक यू।
हाँ ठीक है, ठीक है। So his conclusion that these species were frugivores, fruit eaters. Okay, so in any case, I didn't know the meaning of frugivores. Thank God they've given it. The fruit eaters. So his conclusion. So we are talking about Walker's conclusion. These species were frugivores, fruit eaters, is based upon his observation. Okay, so now he's saying that they were fruit eaters. So earlier he has disputed that they were not into bone crunching. They were not eating hard seeds also. Okay, so hard seeds essentially related to this seed cracking is related to these hard seeds, right? So he's disputing both of these because they produce distinctive microwear characteristics, and possibly, basically, the connection is that he wouldn't have been able to find those microwear characteristics on this species teeth, and that's why he's dismissing both of these hypotheses or whatever suggestions. And now he's arriving at a conclusion that they were actually fruit eaters. So they were not eating hard seeds, or they were not into bone crunching. They were fruit eaters based upon his observation that the tooth microwear characteristics of East African, the same species we were talking about, East African, the same species, the microwear characteristics are indistinguishable. So the microwear characteristics are the same as those of chimpanzees and this species, which are commonly assumed to be fruit eaters. Okay, so he is looking at the microwear patterns or characteristics of these fruit eater species, and he sees that the microwear patterns of this ostra species is the same. So he's thinking, okay, so then the diet must also be the same, right? That's the connection. Yes, yes, yes. Since the microwear patterns are the same, so the diet must also be the same. So that's why he's concluding that they were fruit eaters. Okay. So this is the first paragraph that it started by saying that the patterns may provide evidence about the diets, right? And then it talked about Walker sort of using microwear patterns to question a couple of hypothesis suggestions that this ostra species was, he's saying that it didn't eat hard seeds, so it didn't crunch bones. Rather, he is concluding that they were fruit eaters, so they were mainly into eating fruits. And how is he saying that? Because the microwear patterns are the same as the microwear patterns of some fruit eating species. So this is what the first paragraph is about. Yeah, can you have a question?
Yeah, CJ. So I want to go back to the previous sentence uh, about the heavy enamel. So here, Walker disputes these both seed cracking and bone crunching because he didn't find those distinctive characteristics on the teeth of these uh, A species, right? Right.
Yeah.
So uh,
Yeah.
that is what it states. Now, does that mean he didn't find that heavy enamel on the teeth of A species?
That's not given to us.
Because he says that it is an adaptation to bone crunching, that is a result of bone crunching, and he disputes that. And these both characteristics aren't found on A species. So I thought the heavy enamel sort of thing is a, is not found on A species.
That's a
Can we infer that?
possibility, but the passage is not saying that. It's a
Okay, okay.
possibility.
Because while answering the question, there is a state option related to this, which I got confused with. But
That's
okay,
fine.
when we come to the option statements, we can discuss that again.
Yeah, but from this statement, I cannot say that
Okay, okay,
that that Walker is saying that there was no enamel also. Rather, heavy enamel. So when it's saying that he's disputing that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching, so the relationship is what he is disputing.
Oh, okay. So he's
Okay.
telling that heavy enamel is not because of bone crunching.
Yeah.
Is he disputing that?
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't. To me, it
Oh,
doesn't look like that he's disputing that heavy enamel is not there.
okay.
Why heavy enamel is there? That's what he's talking about. That no, that is not because of bone crunching, because bone crunching produces a unique microwear characteristic. So possibly those specific characteristics were not there on the
Okay.
teeth of that Asta species.
Okay. I did actually fumble a lot, solving this single statement. I reread it and I don't know how to deal this kind of, sentences in atmosphere, exam pressure.
So
Like,
basically, this is the bigger problem actually.
how
That
could we just
const-
infer that in just one go? Sorry to interrupt.
Nice, that is not a question.
Yeah.
You're not asking a right question actually. Not right. Let's say not a right question, not a very helpful question.
Okay.
Because if you constantly think of, okay, how will I do this in the exam, you'll constantly be demotivated and you'll constantly be trying to sort of optimize both on time and clarity. But first, you have to seek clarity. Time is something that happens over a long period of time.
Yeah.
The first thing is ki if there are different levels of clarity. One is that you have just one thought and you are clear with it and you move on. That thought happens to be a wrong thought. So there is no even confusion. You are at that level that you can move on with the wrong thought. Not that the wrong thought arises.
Yeah.
You can continue. The correct thought is not even there. That is one level.
Yeah, that's what actually happened. I was
Hold on, hold on. Let me complete. Okay, so the second is, again across the spectrum, there are a mix of correct and incorrect thoughts. Okay, so it could be that you have 4 incorrect thoughts, you have a correct thought, or you could be one correct thought, or a lot of. So there are a couple of correct ways to also think about. So 2 correct thoughts, but let's say 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 incorrect thoughts, or that's a messed up, whatever. And then, or you could reach a stage where you have just one thought, which is the correct thought, or 2 thoughts, which are both are correct thoughts. Essentially, it's just correct thought, and the other extreme is just incorrect thought, and then there is a whole spectrum in between. Okay, eventually, now your question you're asking is, right, the final stage, ki how do I get there? There is only one thought, which is the correct thought. But you have to first walk through the entire thing. And walking the entire thing means whenever you have thoughts, you try to write down कि ऐसे ये 4 thoughts आ रहे हैं मेरे पे, तो कौन से ठीक है? And how do you even figure out कि कौन सा ठीक है? Let's say आज पता भी लग गया ये ठीक है, तो how do I figure out the next time? What is the process? How do I go about it? So that is the kind of effort you need to put in. That is the outcome you're thinking about. अभी बात है कि क्लैरिटी कैसे बढ़े, कि हाउ डू यू इवन फिगर आउट, लेट्स से इसमें पता लग गया, बट ओके, बट नेक्स्ट में कैसे पता लगेगा? कैसे पता लगा मुझे ये ठीक है कि नहीं है? क्या क्या ऑप्शंस थे, लेट्स से इस स्टेटमेंट को समझने के लिए?
The thing is, I solved it. I read the sentence. I solved the question. There are 2 scenarios here, right? The sense and the later sentence. It belonged to either one of them, either Walker or Zales. Like it is a reason for Walker's dispute or Zales' suggestion. First, I went with Zales' suggestion. I solved the question. Later on, I went and studied everyone, the solutions posted by other people also. There again, I had second thought and I went with the other one. So I already posted my solutions by then, but then, I thought I was wrong. So there are always these 2 ways, right? How do we take the right path? The, so does that comes with practice? Maybe.
So how did you decide in this case which one is the correct thought?
So when I solved initially, I thought it was.
I'm not talking about how you solved. I'm talking about how did we decide now that, let's say we decided.
It made more sense. Probably.
Why did it make more sense?
Because the thought just related to it. I mean, the thought was right. The flow was right. Maybe.
How was the flow right? How was the flow right?
Logic.
हाँ, but logically कैसे flow right था? क्या problem? दूसरे में क्या problem है logically? इसमें logically क्यों सही है?
Maybe that's my question.
नहीं, देखो एक तो देखो ऐसा हो सकता है कि you're still not clear. Then there is no learning. ठीक है, then it's like कि अच्छा आपको पता लग गया इस केस में ये आंसर था, बट क्यों आंसर था ये भी नहीं पता है, तो फिर नेचुरली यू कैन नॉट अप्लाई टू एनी अदर कॉन्टेक्स्ट आल्सो. तो यहाँ पे हमारा था कि अगर इफ यू गो बैक टू द प्रीवियस सेंटेंस, so the walker is using tooth microwave patterns to talk about diets, and in the previous sentence also he was dismissing somebody else, and the walker is the one who was using tooth microwave patterns. And here also we are talking that again he is dismissing somebody, and again we are talking about because of microwave patterns. So in that way it is aligned with the previous sentence. In both the cases, Walker is using microwave patterns. So that's where the third statement is completely aligned. And if we go the other way around, then on one statement we are saying Walker is using microwave patterns to reject Jolly. And on the second sentence we are saying Walker is rejecting somebody who is making a suggestion based on microwave patterns. That would suddenly look like a U-turn. क्या हो गया? अभी तुम माइक्रोवेव पैटर्न करके किसको रिजेक्ट कर रहे हो, नेक्स्ट में तुम उस बंदे को रिजेक्ट कर रहे हो जो खुद माइक्रोवेव पैटर्न यूज करके अपनी हाइपोथेसिस निकालता है, राइट?
Yes.
ये प्रॉब्लम है. This is why we are choosing the second interpretation over the first interpretation.
Okay.
This is the flow. So you have to understand exactly क्या reason है. Only then is there any scope of learning. If you just say कि कुछ floor था, लग रहा था जब मैंने सुना था, बोलते बोलते सही लग रहा था वो,
Yeah.
then there is no. देखो, सही लगना is a subconscious response, और learning always has two important aspects, or rather the second aspect is more important and more generally ignored. The first aspect is knowing कि correct क्यों है. The second aspect is knowing कि मेरी reasoning में क्या problem थी. Yeah, okay. तो let's say it's not just about कि option कौन सा सही है कौन सा गलत है और वो क्यों सही है क्यों गलत है, but let's say option A सही है और B C D E गलत है, ठीक है? तो अब of course there is a reason, expert ने लिखा हुआ है A इसलिए सही है और B C D E इसलिए गलत है, but you selected B, so you rejected A for some reason. So you rejected A, but why can't A be rejected for the reason you had? This is your job to understand. If you have not understood that part, if you like हाँ expert की reasoning तो sense बन रही है, but sense तो तुम्हें अपनी reasoning में बना रही थी ना, उसी basis पे तो ये reject किया था. Until the time you have not understood why your reasoning for option A is wrong, that you will repeat the mistake in some way in future also. And similarly, जिस रीजन से बी सिलेक्ट किया गया था उस रीजन से बी को सिलेक्ट क्यों नहीं कर सकते? यू अंडरस्टैंड कि हाँ इस रीजन से बी को रिजेक्ट कर सकते हैं, एक्सपर्ट ने जो लिखा हुआ, यू मे अंडरस्टैंड दैट, बट तुम्हारी रीजनिंग, तुम्हारे देखने में क्या प्रॉब्लम है? व्हाई कांट वी सी इट दैट वे आल्सो? इफ यू आर नॉट अंडरस्टैंडिंग दैट, योर लर्निंग इज इनकम्प्लीट, यू विल कीप मेकिंग द मिस्टेक्स. ठीक है? सो पीपल थिंक दैट they don't know the right way. A lot of people actually know the right way, but they also know a lot of wrong ways, and they don't have clarity कि क्या सही है क्या गलत है, so they keep having this mess. ठीक है? So a lot of learning actually boils down to understanding कि ये गलत है और इसलिए गलत है. Okay,
Got it.
ठीक है, so I'll just move on for now. Okay, so then the second paragraph starts. However, so it starts with a contrast word. Most of you caught that. There is a contrast at the beginning of this. Research on the diets of contemporary. So different people had, I think I could see some people having different interpretations of the word contemporary. Contemporary means living at the same time. So temporal essentially is related to time. Okay. So contemporary is at the same time, but at the same time as what? So some people thought it's at the same time as this Ostra species, but it's not written. It's just saying contemporary. Okay. So first, in my case, this thought didn't arise, but if I had thought in this direction, my question would be, it's not saying the same time or contemporary of those Ostra species. It's saying the contemporary. And normally, if we say without any contrast, contemporary means same time as we are contemporary, which means the present species. Okay. So research on the diets of contemporary primates suggests, so research on these animals suggests that microwear studies may have limited utility in determining the foods that are actually eaten. Okay, so far, Walker was using microwear patterns to reject Jolly, to reject Zale, and now the author is coming and he's saying, okay, hold on, but the research is telling us that it has limited utility, right? So probably what Walker is doing is being called into question now. And that's why this, however, also makes sense. Right? There is a now change in direction, because so far we were talking about what Walker is doing, and now we are saying, okay, but hold on. This has actually limited utility in determining the foods that are actually eaten. Okay. For example, insect eating which can cause distinct, again, unique microwear patterns, which would not, sorry, hold on. So insect eating would not cause much tooth abrasion. So abrasion is again related to wear and tear, right? So would not cause those patterns probably in modern baboons who eat only soft-bodied insects rather than hard-bodied insects. So even though there is a specific unique microwear pattern associated with insect eating, that pattern wouldn't exist on baboons because they eat, even though because is not there, but we can sort of understand that perhaps is the connection that they're eating only soft-bodied insects. So if they're eating soft, so probably there will not be any wear and tear. That's how I understand. Okay, that's how I sort of visualize why this is the case. So they are soft-bodied insects, so there is no wear and tear, so there are no such patterns. So they are not eating hard-bodied insects, which will probably cause those abrasion or wear and tear. And this is an example of why the microwear studies have limited utility in determining the foods. So how is this an example of that? Because here this person is saying, to strengthen the opinion provided in the previous sentence, the author gives an instance where microwear patterns might have limited usage to determine the diet of baboons. But in what way are we saying that these studies will have limited utility with respect to baboons? Yeah, Kansha.
I think because the micro studies would say that uh, in modern baboons, the micro studies would not show insect eating patterns.
Very
So
good.
according to the modern study, according to the patterns, it should be a certain kind of hard wear and tear. But modern baboons also eat insects, but they're just soft body, so the patterns won't be same. But it doesn't mean that they won't be eating insects.
Yeah, yeah. Just turn on. So right, so it's saying insect eating causes a specific pattern, but that would not be found on modern baboons because they are eating only soft-bodied insects. So if you
Yes.
just go by microwear patterns, it would seem that modern baboons were not even eating insects, whereas they are actually eating insects, it's just that they are eating soft-bodied insects.
Right. Yes.
So this is how I try to make sense, not just what it is saying, but also overall how it connects. Okay. In addition, the diets of current omnivorous primates. Okay, so now it's talking about the diets of current. So now it's talking about the present species, definitely. Okay. Earlier, that's what I was also thinking, and temporary means the current ones. In addition, the diets of current omnivorous primates vary considerably depending upon the environments that different groups within a primate species inhabit. Depending on the environment that different groups within a primate species inhabit. So let's try to understand that. So the author is saying that diets actually जो current omnivorous, so perhaps you know the meaning of omnivorous, who eat, right, variety of things, not just sort of fruits and vegetables, not just meat and all that. They sort of omni means omnidirectional, for example. It's everything, right? So omnivorous. So omnivorous primates, the diets of these vary considerably. So they eat everything, but still the diets vary depending upon which environment they are in. Okay, so if they're in a particular environment, they will eat one thing. In any case, they can eat anything. They are omnivorous. So if you change the environment, they will eat different things. And it's saying that if this species were omnivorous too, we might expect to find considerable population variation in their tooth microwear pattern. So some animals will have a particular kind of tooth microwear pattern, some other will have a different tooth microwear pattern. So again, it's saying that looking at microwear patterns may have a limited utility in telling the diets, because different animals may have different tooth microwear patterns. So by looking at tooth microwear patterns of a certain group of animals, we cannot draw conclusions about the overall species. So again, it's talking about how microwear studies may have limited utility in telling us about the foods that are actually eaten. Does Walker's description of possible the same species diets may need to be expanded? So it's saying eventually the author is concluding that the description of these diets, essentially the diet was originally presumed to be by Walker, that they were fruit eaters, right? And now it's saying that the diet description of the diet may need to be expanded. So because if they were omnivores, they different animals in different areas will be eating different things. So it could be that the animals that Walker is looking at, they were fruit eaters, but some same ostra animals living in some other environment might be eating something else, right? So possibly they may need to be expanded to include a much more diverse diet. This is what the passage is saying. Yeah, any questions, any doubts? Yeah, Rochak, you have a question?
Yes, EJ. So in the second paragraph, it started with this word contemporary, right? So
Yeah.
there we kind of understood it that they're talking about the current time, means mammals. So if it had to relate to the mammals who were living at the same time as this os species, how would means that be used there here?
So then we'll be talking about primates who were contemporary
Two
to,
ospreys, two.
yeah.
Okay. Because I got little confused here. I was thinking that this contemporary here is related to means the one who were living at the same time when these were.
Mm. Yeah. In just a moment. Yeah. Yeah, Andrini, you have a question?
Yeah. So, sir, in the previous paragraph, these like that Walker guy said, these species eat fruits, right? Fruit eaters. So this means they are herbivores.
Yeah.
Now here they are saying ki
Fruit
there are some omnivores who let's say would have different behaviors in different populations. Then how is he saying Walker's description is possibly incorrect, because Walker is concluding he's herbivores and here he's saying omnivores follow certain pattern. So how can he conclude that what omnivores follow will also be same for herbivores?
नहीं, तो वो कह रहा था, तो हाउ वाज वॉकर सेइंग कि वो फ्रूगीवोर्स, मतलब हर्बीवोर और फ्रूगीवोर में फर्क हो सकता है, बट यू आर राइट कि फ्रूगीवोर्स वुड बी पॉसिबली अ सबसेट ऑफ हर्बीवोर्स.
Yes.
तो बट हाँ, वो फ्रूगीवोर्स कह रहा था कि वो फ्रूट ईटर्स हैं, तो पर वो किस बेसिस पे कह रहा था फ्रूट ईटर्स हैं?
वो टीथ पैटर्न्स के बेसिस पे,
टीथ
राइट?
पैटर्न्स के बेसिस पे कह रहा था ना.
हम्म.
वही तो हम कह रहे हैं कि यहाँ पे कि अगर एक ओमनीवोर होगा तो उसकी डाइट डिफरेंट एनवायरनमेंट्स में डिफरेंट होगी. तो अगर आप एक एनवायरनमेंट में पकड़ोगे तो हो सकता है वो फ्रूट ईटर्स ही हो,
राइट.
पर दूसरे एनवायरनमेंट में हो सकता है कि दे विल बी मीट ईटर्स.
बट यहाँ पे तो ओमनीवोर्स की बात कर रहे हैं ना.
हाँ हाँ, तो वही तो वो कह रहा है कि अगर आपने एक एनिमल्स को एक 10 जितने भी उसने कौन सा सारे एनिमल्स को थोड़ा ना पकड़ के उसने कर दिया होगा,
Right.
उसने तो जो भी एक पर्टिकुलर सेट लिया होगा। वैसे तो आई कैन गो बैक एंड शो यू कि वो स्पेसिफिकली ईस्ट अफ्रीकन के बारे में बात कर रहा है। उसने तो ईस्ट अफ्रीकन जानवरों को पकड़ा और बोला कि यार इनके जो माइक्रोवेव पैटर्न हैं सारे फ्रूट ईटर्स की तरह हैं, तो ये सारे फ्रूट ईटर्स होते हैं,
Okay.
राइट। तो उसने तो सबके बारे में बोल दिया कि सारे फ्रूट ईटर्स हैं, बट तुमने स्टडी तो ईस्ट अफ्रीकन को ही करा है,
Right.
तो हो सकता है वेस्ट अफ्रीकन वाले मीट ईटर्स हो, तो फिर वो तो एक तरह से ओमनिवोर्स हो गए क्योंकि वो दोनों खाते हैं।
Okay.
दिस इज व्हाट इट इज टॉकिंग अबाउट। वो ये कह रहा है कि इफ दे वर ओमनिवोर्स टू, तो वो अभी ऑथर इज नॉट टेकिंग अ स्टैंड कि वो पक्का ओमनिवोर्स है, बट वो कह रहा है अगर वो भी ओमनिवोर्स होते तो उनकी डाइट भी चेंज होती, जैसे लिखा हुआ था, राइट। तो वो कह रहा है कि अगर वो भी ओमनिवोर्स हों तो हो सकता है कि उनमें भी वेरिएशन मिले। तो ऑथर इज नॉट सेइंग कि पक्का गलत है, उन्होंने सेइंग कि गलत हो सकता है ये, क्योंकि इसने एक जगह के एनिमल्स को पकड़ के ही इज ड्राइंग अ कंक्लूजन कि वो फ्रूगीवोर्स है,
Okay. Okay. Got it.
राइट।
Yeah.
बट तो ये तो जैसे अब, बट बेसिकली द पॉइंट इज नॉट कि वो जो ईस्ट अफ्रीकन वाला इज अ थिंग दैट आई जस्ट ऑब्जर्व। जब मैंने व्हेन आई ओरिजिनली रेड इट आई जस्ट थॉट कि उसने जो भी एनिमल्स के ऊपर करा होगा, हम बात कर रहे हैं कि उनसे अलावा और एनिमल्स भी हो सकते हैं जहाँ पे वेरिएशन हो सकती है, दैट इज डायरेक्शन। क्योंकि वो बोल रहा है इफ दे वर ओमनिवोर्स टू, तो ही इज एंटरटेनिंग द पॉसिबिलिटी, इज नॉट
Okay.
सेइंग ओमनिवोर्स है, बट सेइंग अगर वो ओमनिवोर होते तो उनकी वेरिएशन होगी, तो हो सकता है तुमने जहाँ के जानवर पकड़े हो वो फ्रूगीवोर्स हों और किसी और जगह के जानवर मीट ईटर्स हों।
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? So anything you learned from our discussion of this passage? Any takeaway? Any specific learning you have before we look at the questions? Anybody wants to share? Clever use of words. कोई टेक अवे नहीं है। गपशप मार रहे हैं।
सर
Yes,
वही
sir,
वाली है।
sorry, go ahead.
ये सर वो जो मींस टूथ एनिमल वाला था, दैट वाज अ टेक अवे कि जो पहले प्रीवियस लाइन की जो बात उसने पैटर्न के बेसिस पे कही थी, एंड ही इज काइंड ऑफ फॉलोइंग द सेम एंड अप्लाइंग इट इन द मींस नेक्स्ट सेंटेंस इटसेल्फ। सो
Yeah.
वो चैलेंजिंग था समझने के लिए, मींस इन वन गो, बट बाद में तो समझ में आ रहा था क्योंकि पैसेज में नीचे गए। बट अगर द क्वेश्चन व्हिच आई आस्क्ड इन द बिगिनिंग वाज बेस्ड ऑन लाइक हाउ वी get to know when we are reading it through in, so it was means again distinctive.
Okay, I see. So your sort of learning was to sort of understand कि कैसे हम उसको उसी टाइम पे अंडरस्टैंड कर सकते थे by just looking at the
हाँ
sentence.
हाँ हाँ हाँ,
Okay,
मतलब कनेक्शन बनाना चाहिए था वो चीज पहले वाले से, बट वो शायद मिस हुआ मेरी मेरी तरफ से
I
कि
see. ठीक है, I see. Yeah, you wanted to say something?
Yes, sir, same. I was not doing the linking, the reasoning was incorrect. And that's why probably my first question is also wrong. I checked the solution. I knew it, I knew I'm marking it wrong after I marked it, but I didn't want to change my answer. So
अच्छा,
I do see that ऊपर से पढ़ना and telling yourself that since is connected, just knowing the meaning of the words and trying to connect it with Zale's suggestion, that linking that I've been doing is wrong. And जो आप implicit meaning बता रहे हो, वो skill ज़्यादा develop नहीं है मेरी. So
implicit मतलब कौन सा?
जो आपने ये explain किया था, reasoning, इसका heavy enamel का,
क्या implicit क्या था उसमें?
सर मुझे वो एकदम नहीं लगा, आई कुड नॉट लिंक इट कि रीजनिंग किसके बारे में कह रहे हैं, इस वॉकर की रीजनिंग है या जालेस की रीजनिंग है। तो जो
बट उसमें
आपने,
implicit क्या था? हाँ, आप कह रहे हो यू आई टॉक्ड अबाउट सम इम्प्लिसिट रीजनिंग समथिंग.
yes, you spoke about some implicit meaning on the top, not, sorry, not for heavy enamel line, but something above. You spoke something, I can't recollect now, but आपने mention भी किया था कि ये implicit meaning है, तो ऊपर के lines में किया था शायद आपने।
हाँ, मैंने इसी लाइन में किया था कि हम ये कैसे कह सकते हैं कि बोन क्रंचिंग से यूनिक माइक्रोवेव पैटर्न होता है. Then
हाँ
how does that dispute Zale's suggestion that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching? So then the connection I was making was he Walker must not have found that specific microwear pattern on the teeth of this austral species. That's what I was saying.
yeah,
कि हमने
so
जब austral species के teeth देखे तो microwear pattern नहीं मिला. So
हाँ
it indicates that that species was not into bone crunching. That species was not into bone crunching, then we cannot say that anything is an adaptation to bone crunching in that species, because bone crunching तो हुई नहीं रही है. How can something be an adaptation to bone crunching?
yeah,
So
so
that's the connection.
हाँ, तो वो कनेक्शन नहीं बना पाई थी मैं, मेरी।
कनेक्शन ना बना पाना तो एक अलग बात होती है. पहले होता है द सब मोर इम्पोर्टेंट थिंग इज कि वो क्वेश्चन भी आ रहा है दिमाग में कि बट ये कि इसका यूनिक पैटर्न होता है तो उससे उसकी सजेशन डिस्प्यूट कैसे हो जाएगी.
हम्म, हाँ, तो जो जो क्वेश्चन रोचक ने रेज किया था, यही यही था ना, यही क्वेश्चन था ना उन्होंने जो रेज
नहीं
किया था,
नहीं,
तो वो क्वेश्चन।
रोचक ने अलग क्वेश्चन रेज किया, और रोचक ने क्वेश्चन रेज किया था बिटवीन टू डिफरेंट वेज ऑफ रीडिंग द सेंटेंस. आई एम सेइंग इवन इफ यू रीड द राइट वे, still the question would be how does this make sense. ठीक है. So रोचक didn't raise this question. रोचक ने पूछा था कि जैसे उसमें लिखा हुआ है कि वॉकर इज डिस्प्यूटिंग y बिकॉज x.
हाँ
तो वो कह रहा था कि y बिकॉज x है या डिस्प्यूटिंग बिकॉज x है. ओके, दैट वाज हिज क्वेश्चन. देन आई टोल्ड कि then we discussed कि essentially is it disputing because x. Okay, so Walker is disputing y because x. So he is disputing because x. But how would x lead to a dispute on y? That is what right now I was talking about. I'm not sure whether that is making sense.
no, it is making sense, it is making sense, yes.
हाँ, तो वो कनेक्शन की बात है. वो पहले तो वो क्वेश्चन आना चाहिए कि बट x से y पे डिस्प्यूट कैसे हो जाएगा. Some people not ask this question because the more fundamental thing is to ask the question. Whether you'll be able to find the answer, that depends on skills. But if you ask question and you pursue that question to the best of your ability, you are increasing your skills. कई लोगों के लिए आंसर विल बी इंस्टेंटेनियस क्योंकि स्किल्स हैं उनके पास. ठीक है, वो जैसे ही पढ़ेंगे दिल लाइक हाँ ऐसे ही हुआ होगा और क्या. और जब मैं उनको पूछूंगा कि ये, वो कहेंगे हमें नहीं पता आंसर क्या है. बट जब मैं आंसर बताऊंगा लाइक हाँ ये तो था मेरे दिमाग में. तो वो तो कई लोग जब बोलते हैं हाँ मेरे दिमाग में यही था, वो ऑफ कोर्स वो भी दो रीजन से हो सकता है वो दिमाग में था और इट वाज सो ऑब्वियस टू देम कि लाइक हाँ ऐसे ही होगा. और कई बारी मतलब एक दिमाग के किसी किनारे में उनको लग रहा था हाँ इस तरह से सोचा जा सकता है, दे आर लाइक हाँ शायद था ही दिमाग में. बट दैट दीज आर टू डिफरेंट थिंग्स. ओके,
Yeah,
ठीक है कि कनेक्शन दिमाग ने बना लिया एंड इट इज सो ऑब्वियस दैट somebody asks क्या कनेक्शन, यू लाइक आई डोंट नो क्या कनेक्शन. बट इट इज सो ऑब्वियस टू यू.
yeah,
द सेकेंड लेवल इज कि जब दूसरे ने बता दी ये कनेक्शन नहीं लगा कि हाँ ऐसे सोच सकते हैं तो मैं भी ऐसे सोच सकता था. बट देन इट्स अ डिफरेंट लेवल. तो अभी तो
yeah,
काफी काम करने की जरूरत है. ठीक है.
yeah.
ठीक है. So let's get to the questions. Questions. ठीक है. Okay. So according to the passage, Walker and Zale disagree on which of the following points. So Walker और Zale का कहाँ पे था? यहाँ पे था. तो तो So Walker is essentially disputing Zale's suggestion that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching because बोन क्रंचिंग का एक यूनिक माइक्रोवेव पैटर्न होता. The structure and composition of the teeth, so which is right. So sorry. So both of these people are saying, yeah, nowhere we are talking about the composition of teeth, which is right. We are not talking about the composition of teeth. We are talking about the patterns on teeth. The kinds of conclusion that can be drawn from the microwear patterns on the teeth. Okay. Okay. So yeah, so I think this is Ria's, right, Ria?
Yes.
So okay, so you were thinking is Ali's suggestion is based on that microwear pattern. Okay. So he is disputing. हाँ तो वो मतलब so you didn't find that odd कि पहले वो खुद माइक्रोवेव पैटर्न करके किसी को डिस्प्यूट कर रहा है and then he is also disputing somebody who is using microweave patterns to make a suggestion, right? और वो डिस्प्यूट क्यों कर रहा है, किस बेसिस पे कर रहा है, वो कहीं बताया ही नहीं. That's also right.
Yeah.
जिसको डिस्प्यूट कर रहा है उसका बेसिस बता दिया, बट उसका डिस्प्यूट करने का बेसिस नहीं बताया सेंटेंस ने.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so the second person is saying Walker and Zale don't agree about the function of the heavy enamel, not the kinds of conclusion. So yeah, so they don't agree that this species was into bone crunching, and that's why they don't agree that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching, right? So yeah, but we have not said anything about Zale, that Zale is using microweave patterns. Walker is using microweave patterns. Okay, so we are not talking about the conclusions drawn by Zale from microweave patterns. So we can't say they are disagreeing on the conclusions that can be drawn from microweave patterns. The idea that fruit was a part of this diet. So Zale is not talking about fruit. Okay, eventually Walker talks about that they were frugivores, but Zale doesn't talk about. So this is not the point of disagreement. Or we can't say this is the point of disagreement because we don't know anything about what Zale says about fruit eating. The extent to which seed cracking and bone crunching produce. So again, this is nowhere discussed. So it's saying the extent to which they are similar. So they may be unique, but they may be similar to some extent, right? So, but we are nowhere talking about to which extent they are similar or is there any dispute, right? In fact, it's the opposite. No, if you're saying it's the opposite, and I'm not sure you have understood the option. So they could be similar to some extent. It's just saying the disagreement is on the extent to which they are similar. They could be unique, but they could be similar to some extent. They may not be similar in every aspect. The function of the heavy enamel, that is correct, because Zale was saying it's an adaptation to bone crunching, whereas Walker is saying that they were not bone crunching. A lot of people actually marked option B as the answer. Many of us, I think, बहुत सारे मैंने at least browsed through many of the submissions. I could see many people marked option B. Any doubts, any questions regarding the first question? Yeah, Gansha.
So I agree that why D could be wrong. I got that option, like I got that logic in my mind. But then I boiled it down to option D and E. And E, yes. And in E, I felt that it was only Zale who was discussing about the function of the heavy enamel. And then Walker never talked about the enamel as such. So that's why I rejected it. But I wasn't like, I got very confused between D and E. So then I ended up choosing D because I felt that that could be related to both.
So you selected D, the extent to which. So you understand the meaning. Let's say I have to explain the meaning of D. How would you explain it?
So I would explain it as the similarity in patterns from bone and seed. So um as in extent, I did not pay much attention to the word extent here. That was the mistake that I made. I understood it as
Okay,
sim-
go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
I understood the sentence as the similarity in the bone and seed cracking behavior pattern.
Similarity or the similarity between X and Y. उस
Yes.
पे डिसएग्रीमेंट है. तो एक कह रहा है कि ज्यादा सिमिलर है, एक कह रहा है कम सिमिलर है, या फिर कुछ और. क्या मतलब नजर?
Like, so I felt that extent तो I ignored,
ठीक है.
and then I felt that between D and E, so I did not fully.
नहीं, अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा. वो तो चलो ठीक है. अच्छा, आप कह रहे हो यू वर डाउन टू डी एंड ई, तो डी समझ नहीं आ रहा था बट यू मार्क्ड इट, ऐसे कह रहे हो आप?
हाँ, लाइक E मैंने रिजेक्ट कर दिया, तो अब
अच्छा,
D बचा था, विच मेड काइंड ऑफ सेंस कि मेरे को लगा दोनों में कॉमन है समथिंग लाइक अ सिमिलैरिटी बिटवीन बोन एंड सीड, तो आई चोज D.
दोनों में किन दोनों में कॉमन है मतलब?
इन बोथ इन W
वॉकर एंड जाले. वॉकर और जाले में क्या कॉमन है?
they're talking about the patterns. So when I was reading, I understood that कि जो patterns वाला part है, he disagrees, Walter disagrees on the pattern, right? And then I assumed कि uh, Zale also understands that, like उनका same wavelength में है. He would also kind of disagree on the pattern वाला thing, but I did not assume that Walter would know about the function.
नहीं नहीं, तो Walter doesn't know about the function. Walker, sorry. Walker is just, so if you just read the sentence, would see the dispute function के ऊपर है, because the disputing the suggestion that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching, कि bone crunching की वजह से heavy enamel. So basically, according to Zale, heavy enamel is playing a role in bone crunching.
Yes.
So essentially, so it's the suggestion is about the function of enamel, and if you are disputing, naturally you have a dispute around the function of enamel. That is just the meaning of this, even if you don't understand anything else.
Yes, I agree. But then I was also like, dispute होने के लिए they should think about it also, right? In the same term. So I was like, कि Zale is thinking about the function. He has mentioned about the function of the enamel. But Walker has never, Walker has never even thought about the function. He's only talking about micro patterns.
नहीं नहीं नहीं, वो तो हमें देने की जरूरत नहीं है. नहीं तो आकांक्षा, अगर ऐसे अगर आपको कोई स्टेटमेंट बोलता है, सीजे डिस्प्यूट्स आकांक्षा's contention that x leads to y.
Hmm.
So what do you think CJ thinks?
Right. CJ doesn't agree. CJ thinks that X does not lead to Y.
Right. It doesn't need to be explicitly told. That is the meaning of the sentence. कि अगर if I am saying that CJ disputes Akansha's contention that X leads to Y, इसका मतलब है CJ thinks that X doesn't lead to Y. तो वैसे ही we can say that Walker doesn't think that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching. So according to him, enamel किसी और वजह से है. That is not the function of enamel.
Right.
That is the meaning of this.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
ठीक है. और कुछ in the first question? और अच्छा, डी पे वापस आते हैं. तो डी का मतलब है द एक्सटेंट टू विच दे आर सिमिलर. तो एक जैसे, तो इसका मतलब इस पे डिस्प्यूट होने का मतलब हो गया कि एक कह रहा है 40% सिमिलर है, दूसरा कह रहा है नहीं नहीं 50% सिमिलर है या 60%. देयर इज एब्सोल्युटली जीरो डिस्कशन अराउंड कि वो आपस में कितने सिमिलर है, बस इतना बोला गया कि दोनों के यूनिक पैटर्न्स हैं।
Right. Yeah.
वो आपस में पैटर्न्स यूनिक तो हैं, बट आपस में कितने सिमिलर हैं, देयर इज एब्सोल्युटली जीरो डिस्कशन अराउंड दैट।
Yeah. I agree. I totally ignored the word extent while analyzing.
ठीक है, तो नॉर्मली ये कॉम्प्रिहेंशन प्रॉब्लम से होती हैं sort of, and then you find options close. Options are not designed to be close. Okay, let's look at the second question. The passage suggests that which of the following would be true of studies of tooth microwear patterns conducted on modern baboons. Modern baboons के बारे में हमने यहाँ पे बात करी थी कि इंसेक्ट ईटिंग में नॉर्मली माइक्रोवेयर पैटर्न्स होते हैं, बट क्योंकि ये सॉफ्ट बॉडीड इंसेक्ट्स खाते हैं तो इनके वहाँ पे टूथ एब्रेशन माइक्रोवेयर पैटर्न्स नहीं है। Right? That's what we know about modern baboons from the passage. So it's saying which of the following would be true of studies. तो अगर इनके ऊपर tooth microwear patterns के ऊपर studies करी जाए modern baboons के, then what would be true? What is the suggestion from the passage? That's what we know from the passage. Okay, they would inaccurately, and let me go to the two. Not sure if it is very confusing for you, but अच्छा यहाँ पे आए ही नीचे for some reason. Okay. They would inaccurately suggest that some baboons eat more soft-bodied than hard-bodied insects. So studies which are looking at microwear patterns and of these baboons, these studies would inaccurately suggest that they're eating more soft-bodied than hard-bodied insect. It is not inaccurate, as the passage says, baboons eat more. तो मतलब there are several aspects to it. Let me just actually do it on my own. So it's saying they would inaccurately suggest that some baboons eat more soft-bodied than hard-bodied. If for some of the baboons, the studies would inaccurately suggest. So first of all, the studies would suggest, and that would be inaccurate. Okay, so first of all, let's try to understand. The studies will suggest that some baboons eat more soft-bodied than hard-bodied insects. What we are given is baboons eat only soft-bodied insects. So they are not eating hard-bodied insects. So if your study is suggesting that they are eating more soft-bodied than hard-bodied, you are naturally correct, right? You are accurate, because definitely all baboons eat more soft-bodied than hard-bodied insects because they eat only soft-bodied. Okay, so this cannot be inaccurate. And let's say if I change it to accurate, then what would happen? Hmm. So what about A1? Yeah, Rochak.
Sir, here it is talking about some baboons, and in the paragraph, it is mentioned as a whole the modern baboons.
इसमें ही है let's सम को डाल देते हैं फिर.
So, sir, in this comparison, whether it is A1, A2, or even the A eating more than the hard body, so can we assume that they are not at all eating the hard bodied insects? Those are always those can be taken as zero also, because it is mentioned as only in the passage.
Yeah, so let's say if I'm not a meat eater,
Hmm.
then can we say CJ eats more fruits than meat?
Yeah, according to me, yeah, we can say that.
Yeah. So what about A2? Yeah, Akhil.
Uh, so what I think is, so there is something with aberration here, right? Even though the passage explicitly say that uh, they eat only soft bodies rather than hard body insects because of that aberration not being present there. So I think even though we conduct these microwear patterns on these baboons, it wouldn't distinguish between hard body insects and soft body insects because those aberrations are not being present there. So I think it would inaccurately suggest. So
Yes,
I
you
think,
think it would not distinguish.
yeah,
The study would not be able to distinguish whether they are eating soft bodied or.
yeah, yeah. So this option wouldn't be
Yep.
right
Yeah. Why would it not be able to distinguish?
because the only criteria for them to distinguish is for that tooth abrasion,
Correct.
right?
टूथ एब्रेशन को स्टडी कर सकते हैं which is tooth microwear pattern, right?
Huh. So that wasn't there.
हाँ, वो तो है नहीं, जो सॉफ्ट बॉडीड खा रहे हैं उनका तो है ही नहीं.
Okay, then maybe the study would actually accurately suggest this would be the right answer, maybe.
ठीक है. So I have some
I
comments there.
little confused, yeah.
ठीक है, so कोई बात नहीं. Let me read. Even तो Tanisha has written a long comment. Nice. Even if you were to change it to accurate, would still be incorrect. This is because the question specifically asks the studies suggests which of the following, and from the passage you know that we can necessarily rely on. We cannot necessarily rely on. हाँ, yeah. So yeah. So basically देखो the studies इसमें किस context में लिखा गया है कि basically the previous statement was saying कि microwave studies have limited utility. कि उनसे में एक लिमिटेड यूटिलिटी है पता लगाने में कि क्या फूड्स खाए जाए, विच फूड्स आर बीइंग ईटन, राइट? एंड देन इट सेज बाय द वे, फॉर एग्जांपल insect eating, normally it has a unique microwear pattern, but in modern baboons you wouldn't find that pattern even though they are also eating insects. Why? Because they are eating soft bodied insects. So if you do a study based on microwear patterns, you would think they are not eating any insect at all because there are no microwear patterns on their teeth, right? That is a connection between the first and the second. Is you're doing a study on by studying microwear patterns, but they don't have microwear patterns, right? Or would not cause much. So possibly they have much less significant tooth abrasion, significantly less tooth abrasion, right? Then would be indicated by how much they are eating, right? So you would think that they are eating much less quantity of insects than they're actually eating because you don't find a lot of tooth abrasion there. Okay. This is the point. And now it's saying studies would indicate, accurately suggest that they're eating So studies essentially would not be able to take into account soft-bodied versus hard-bodied. This is the problem. Studies को तो बस इतना ही पता है insect eating का ये pattern है, right? So does this pattern exist? So there is not much aberration happening there. So possibly the pattern is to a minimal extent there. So they would think they're not much into insect eating, right? Given the context, we wouldn't expect the studies based on microbear patterns to create a distinction between soft-bodied and hard-bodied insects, right? So these would also remain wrong. There is absolutely no indication that studies would be accurately suggesting, yeah, they are eating soft-bodied. No. We have, rather on the contrary, we don't expect studies to create this distinction given the passage. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so they would suggest that insects constitute the largest part. So again, on the contrary, they would think that they're not eating much insects, right? Because there's hardly any tooth aberration there, right? So this is to the contrary. They would reveal that there are no significant differences in tooth microwear patterns among baboon populations. They would reveal that there are no significant differences in tooth microwear patterns among baboon populations. We don't know. Of course, the tooth aberration is minimal, so the patterns are probably sort of existing to a limited extent. But are there no differences among baboon populations? We don't know. Okay, so one could be eating a lot of soft-bodied insects, could be leading to a little more tooth aberration than others who could be eating much less soft-bodied insects. So we don't know. The differences we don't talk about in different parts of the population. They would inadequately reflect the extent to which some baboons consume certain types of insects. Yeah. So they would inadequately reflect because they would not find much wear and tear. So they would think that they are not much into eating insects, but they're eating soft-bodied insects. So they would inadequately reflect. So they would think they are possibly eating some insects to some extent because there is some tooth aberration, but they are underestimating that. So it's an inadequate reflection of what is actually happening. Right? So option D is the answer. They would indicate that baboons in certain regions eat only, again, they cannot, given the passage, we don't expect these studies to get into telling us about soft-bodied insects because they are just looking at microwear patterns, right? So they would think that there is hardly any tooth aberration, so they would think they are not into eating insects. They would not get into this distinction that somebody is eating soft-bodied, somebody else is eating hard-bodied. Okay, so option D is the answer. Questions, confusions, doubts? Yeah, Kushbu.
Hi, CJ. Sorry, I was not there in between, but I was able to get these questions right. But my only ask in RC, which I am facing issue is, when there is a very long passage, uh, if the language is, simple, I'm able to relate or connect, then it becomes easy for me. But sometimes, the language is complicated, or you can say some scientific or some space thing, I mean, out of different contexts, then it becomes difficult for, or maybe I become intimidated that, because this is very long and I do not have any idea about this thing. And so how to deal with those kind of passages where these are very long and context is also way different and complicated language. So I face issue in those passages.
So can I take generic questions at the end? Let me, if somebody
Oh,
has,
sorry. Yep,
right?
yep.
So
Yep.
somebody has questions specific to this passage or questions of this passage, we can first address those and then sort of whatever time we have left, then we can talk about it. So any generic questions with respect to us. Yeah, Tushar, you have a question?
Yes, sir. So I actually rejected option D here because of the word inadequately, because I thought that in the second para, the author sort of lays his own opinion, and in no way he is opposing any of the research on the diets of contemporary primates. And inadequately sort of is a negative word for the research that they were not adequate. So that's why I rejected option D, and instead I marked option E. So, I mean,
तो शुरुआत ही वैसे कर रहा है research on that microwave studies may have limited utility. वो तो paragraph की शुरुआत ही negative है about those studies.
yeah, but the research
हाँ,
claims that,
research मतलब I don't. So you're saying there is a difference between research and studies?
yeah, I thought that there's an additional research that happened on diets, which suggests that microwave studies will have limited utility. That was my understanding.
हाँ, ये तो ठीक है. एक रिसर्च ने हमें बताया है कि स्टडीज की
This
लिमिटेड यूटिलिटी है.
question is about, oh, okay.
नहीं, तो
The
अगर
question
ऑथर
is-
हमें
oh,
ये रिसर्च को साइट कर रहा है,
hmm.
तो आपको क्या लग रहा है कि
Okay.
ऑथर डजंट हैव अ स्टैंड पॉइंट देन?
No. I got the question incorrect in this case then. I thought it is asking about would be true of the research instead of the studies.
ओके.
Yeah, my bad.
ओके. बट एक्चुअली रिसर्च के बारे में स्पेसिफिकली नहीं बताया कि वो माइक्रोवेव स्टडीज माइक्रोवेव के ऊपर है कि नहीं है. रिसर्च इज ऑन द डाइट्स ऑफ प्राइमेट्स.
Yeah.
तो इट कुड बी कि रिसर्च आपने प्राइमेट्स के ऊपर करी, डाइट्स के ऊपर, कि अच्छा ये लोग ये खाते हैं, फिर दूसरी कुछ स्टडीज हो रखी हैं उन सेम लोगों के ऊपर, माइक्रोवेव पैटर्न्स के ऊपर जो स्टडीज हो रखी हैं, उसके हिसाब से उनको कुछ और खाना चाहिए. देन लाइक ओके, होल्ड ऑन, देन अकॉर्डिंग टू द रिसर्च दी स्टडीज आर नॉट वेरी यूजफुल बिकॉज एक्चुअली तो वो कुछ और ही खा रहे हैं, राइट?
Yeah.
ओके. एनीथिंग एल्स from these two questions or from the passage? Yeah, Kancha.
I just had one observation that this was a very short RC compared to others that we see, but still it had so many nuances and which could like easily get missed, or I think I wouldn't comprehend it that well. Like I took 2 hours to solve these two questions and write down log and do everything.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just wanted to know, is it like kind of, is this the level for the new focus edition since you've given it?
It's just the level का क्या मतलब है? नहीं, the level I don't think has changed. ठीक है, तो if you are not getting questions right, you'll get easier passages. If you're getting questions right, you'll get hard passages.
I mean, yeah, in the hard passages only. Is this like one of the hard passages that you've selected?
I think it's yeah, it's a reasonably hard passage. इससे भी hard है of course, but it's a reasonably hard passage. It's not an easy or a medium passage.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions, doubts from the passage? Or again, if you don't have questions, you have a takeaway, any learning specific from the passage or our discussion of the questions. Yeah, Shivangi.
So my second question was wrong, and when Tushar was explaining his explanation, I was trying to read my explanation and realize where did I go wrong, because even when you were explaining it, I was very lost. And then I realized that I read the question as the passage suggests, which of the following would be true of this research actually. And then the example somehow supported the E option. And then I got confused, but then I rethought about how you connected it, and then I got the answer right.
लेट्स से अगर वो रिसर्च के ऊपर भी होता तो रिसर्च ये क्यों इंडिकेट करेगी कि baboons in other regions eat hard-bodied insects because they are it's saying baboons eat only soft-bodied insects now. It's given here. So why would we expect from the passage for this that the research will be wrong for some regions?
So basically, I think while I was reading this option, I think my mind did not include certain regions in the explanation.
That's
So
right.
when I was reading it also, I just understood who eat only soft-bodied insects rather than hard-bodied. So I did not make the conclusion there will be some extent attached to it. It is either they are soft-bodied or either they are hard-bodied. And that's why there will be distinct tooth abrasion in modern baboons.
Okay.
Like soft body will might have less tooth abrasions and
Mhm.
no, soft bodies, yeah. And then there are
Soft-
only soft bodied animals. There is no like there's no extent. The same insect is not soft body eating,
uh,
soft bodied insect eating and hard bodied insect. So
uh,
because I think it's only what kind of stuck with me, and all my explanations are about only those baboons who eat only soft body animals, insects, and only hard bodied insects.
पर only hard-bodied किसने लिखा हुआ है?
It didn't, but that's what I understood.
Okay, I see. Interesting. Okay. Anything else? Any other learning takeaway or questions with respect to this passage, and then we can spend 5 minutes talking about generic questions. Because I have my next question after this. ठीक है, तो कुछ नहीं आ रहा है खुशबू. Yeah, let's talk about. So you are saying कि कई लंबे passages होते हैं, complex passages, then you find those hard to understand. Is that what your question was? How to go about them?
Yes. And the topic is also not generic, maybe some humanity or science specific or so there are two problems. One is in my mind that I feel intimidated on those passages, and second is uh how to deal, I mean how to do practice specifically for those passages. Because if they come in maybe two para, I'm able to do it. But somehow if they, come in four para, then it becomes difficult for me.
Normal है. तो लेट्स से लाइफ में आपकी एक ही प्रॉब्लम है, बाकी सब चीजें सॉर्टेड है. लेट्स से जीमैट इज अ बिग इशू बट एवरीथिंग एल्स इज सॉर्टेड. सो लाइफ एक लेवल ऑफ चैलेंज है लाइफ में. बट लेट्स से अब एक जीमैट भी नहीं चल रहा है, एक ब्रेकअप भी हो रहा है. लेट्स से हो रहा है. तो लेट्स से एक ब्रेकअप हो रहा है. And then let's say there is something else going on at the office. So now it's right. Individuals can manage each of these, but अब तीनों इकट्ठे हो रहे हैं. तो naturally वहाँ पे चैलेंज है, right? तो वो सेम चीज है कि अब एक जो पैसेज जो डिफिकल्टी होती है, इट्स नॉट जस्ट अबाउट द लेंथ, इट्स ऑल्सो अबाउट द लैंग्वेज, द कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी ऑफ लैंग्वेज. इट्स ऑल्सो अबाउट familiarity. If it is business passage, I'll be very comfortable. It's an archaeology passage, I'll not be comfortable. लेंथ है, लैंग्वेज कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी है, फेमिलियरिटी, तीनों है. इफ तीनों ही मैं अगेंस्ट ले जाऊंगा आपके, इट्स गोइंग टू बी सुपर हार्ड फॉर यू, राइट? तो अब उसको कैसे, हाउ टू बिल्ड दैट? तो पहले तो है कि इंडिविजुअली दे शुड बी वेरी इजी फॉर यू, और दे विल बी, जितने इजी होते जाएंगे उतना ट्रिपल को भी इकट्ठा भी कर दूंगा तब भी दे विल नॉट बिकम सो चैलेंजिंग. ठीक है, तीनों इकट्ठे मिलके चैलेंज, लेकिन इंडिविजुअली भी उनको संभालना मुश्किल ही होता है. यू कैन मैनेज, बट इट्स नॉट कि हाँ ये तो बच्चों का खेल है, राइट? जब वो इंडिविजुअली बहुत आसान होते जाएंगे, तो इवन इफ आई स्टार्ट पुटिंग 2 or 3 टुगेदर, दे विल नॉट बिकम ओवरबेयरिंग फॉर यू. because it's about कि आप इंडिविजुअली या 2 at a time को कितना आसान बना सकते हो, देन इवेंचुअली इट्स 3 at a time, फिर तीनों को इकट्ठे ही कर लेते हैं. तो इट्स नेचुरली पीपल थिंक कि वेरी हार्ड क्वेश्चंस तो होते ही नहीं है, तो उनको कैसे करें. अरे हार्ड में कितनी क्लैरिटी है, मीडियम में कितनी क्लैरिटी है. मीडियम हो जाते हैं बट क्लैरिटी कितनी है, वो वहां पे भी नहीं होती है क्लैरिटी.
Yeah, you are right.
तो इट्स अ वेरी हार्ड कॉन्टेक्स्ट फॉर यू. अगर तीनों ही आपके अगेंस्ट है, लेंथ भी अगेंस्ट है, लैंग्वेज भी अगेंस्ट है, फैमिलियरिटी भी नहीं है, बट द वे इज कि आप जो पहले 1 at a time या 2 at a time आ रहे हो उस पर कितना होल्ड बना पा रहे हो.
So basically, to get comfortable with maybe a smaller one and have better
पहले जैसे
understanding.
आर्कियोलॉजी में प्रॉब्लम होती है, तो पहले आर्कियोलॉजी के सिंपल पैसेज तो पूरा होल्ड आ जाए, धीरे धीरे उनमें कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी बढ़ेगी.
Because sometimes I'm able to get answer, but maybe my understanding wouldn't be that in detail. That has to be. So that could be the thing, right? Okay, got it.
Okay, I can take one more question before I leave. Any more question? Okay, seems we're good to go. Okay, then see you in the next session, next weekend. We'll talk about the psychology of GMAT preparation. I'll think a little about it and I'll possibly ask your inputs on what you would want to cover in that session. So yeah, see you next weekend. Take care. Yeah, Ria, you want to say something?
So just one last thing. Do we actually need 2 hours for the psychology session? Do we want to keep it a mix of 2 topics? Just a thought.
No, we'll need at
We'll
least
need.
6 hours. So there are 3 psychology of GMAT sessions. We'll be utilizing all 3. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank
Okay,
you.
take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, CJ.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.